Hi guys! Okay, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about why I didn't go into big law and to talk to you about some options that are alternatives to big law. If you're an aspiring lawyer or current law student, you may have heard the term big law by now, which means basically just a big law firm that employs a lot of lawyers, as opposed to the smaller boutique law firms or smaller firms, right? So I'm going to explain to you why I didn't go into it, give you some options to see which one may fit best for you, because it really is specific to your own needs. Let's talk about it. Okay, so if you're new to the channel, we have a whole playlist on pre-law, law school, and beyond. We try to prepare you from the moment you decide you want to go to law school, while you're in the thick of it, and what's going to happen when you graduate. So in this video, I'm going to talk about those people that are closest probably to the end, but if it's on your radar, you maybe want to think about these things, right? Make sure to give this video a thumbs up so that it goes out to the YouTube algorithm, the YouTube community. And if you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to our channel. Okay, so big law, as I mentioned before, is those bigger law firms. They're usually in big cities, but they don't have to be. They employ a large number of attorneys, and they're usually pretty successful firms, right? So why didn't I go into big law? Well, the first reason is probably just a practicality reason, right? I went to law school at the University of District of Columbia, David A. Clark School of Law in D.C., and they don't really prepare us for big law, right? We are a public interest law school. They prepare us to serve our community. We do community service hours. We have to do a certain amount of pro bono clinical work because that's what they're grooming us for. So as a practical matter, it wasn't a school that was gearing us towards big law anyway. I know the school that's close to us was right down the street from us, which is Howard University, which is also a HBCU. They prepare some of their students for big law. Some of them they do prepare for public interest. But the difference between my law school, and Howard is that they do on-campus interviews for big law. Big law firms come into the campus of the law school and do interviews to see who they want to pick from their school to go to the firm. At my school, we didn't have on-campus interviews for big law. We had people coming in from government agencies, but not from big law. So as a practical matter, we weren't really exposed to the law school. It really wasn't behind us going out and making a whole bunch of money and not helping anybody, right? The idea was to help people out. And not to say that big law people don't help people out and give back and do pro bono work, but my law school was basically preparing us for public interest work. Okay, before I go any further, do you have any big law associates, summer associates on the line? Give us some comments, give us some experiences from your own journey, because obviously, like I said, I've never been in big law. I can't really speak to it personally, but I know the experiences that others have shared with me. So if you want to chime in, any of those that are interested in going to public interest, chime in below in the comment section. If you watch my other, I can't remember the name of the video, but I do other videos about like how you decide which law school you want to go to. That will be one of the reasons you pick a law school, right? If you are meant to be in the public interest, if you want to work in some kind of government agency or a nonprofit, then you perhaps will cater your law school applications to those particular schools. If you want to be in big law, or you think you want to be in big law, you come to the other side later, you will cater your application to those. So I knew I wanted to do something to give back, and I didn't really think about big law in the sense that I wanted to work at a big law firm. But if that's something that you want to do, keep that in mind when you're doing your initial applications, because that will make your job a lot easier. So if you had started at my law school and you're like, I want to be in big law, it probably would serve you best to transfer to a school that kind of catered to those needs. They kind of groomed you for that kind of trajectory. So when I started out, I wanted to be a lawyer. I actually wanted to be a judge, right? And there are people that come from big law that end up being a judge. But there are also ones that start out and always be in public interest work and work their way up through the U.S. Attorney's Office to maybe a state court to federal court, things of that nature, right? So my whole career has actually been in the government. I've interned for D.C. Attorney General's office. I've interned for D.C. Superior Court. I interned for judges within the D.C. Superior Court and the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. I worked at the D.C. Superior Court. I currently work at a federal agency now. So it was obvious that I wanted to be in public interest and not necessarily big law. There are some pros and cons to working in the government versus big law, and I'll kind of get into that so you can decide what's best for you, because like I said, it's particular to you. But I chose my route. I never really entertained anything that was outside of the public interest or government agencies from the start. So keep that in mind. If you look at your resume, what story does it tell? Because my resume definitely tells a story. What is your story that your resume tells? Because if it tells a story that doesn't lead to the direction you're going, you may have to do some opportunities, do some internships, do some experiences that show like I'm interested in whatever you're going for your next position. I know even before you graduate law school, a lot of times you kind of know whether you're going to be in big law or not, right? Because what happens is, what I hear from talking to other colleagues is while you're in law school, where you do your second summer that'll be your first summer. So it's right after your first year of law school, where you summer, meaning where you have an internship or a summer associate position, is probably where, if you do a good job, you'll be asked to come back. So, not to say that you can't be hired from a law firm after that if you weren't an associate there, but that's usually the trajectory of people who end up being hired at those firms. They were summer associates there. And I guess the draw of a lot of these places is that they get paid big bucks, right? They get paid the same salary as a regular associate, just condensed into the summer session, which is a pretty decent amount of money for a summer job. Whereas I worked in public interest for an internship, and it was nothing compared to what summer associates were getting at the firm. So one of the big appeals for big law is big salaries, right? Although salaries have kind of had some going up and down in the last few years, they still pale in comparison to government work, right? And I would say that they have big salaries. They also have something called billable hour requirements, where you have to bill a certain amount of hours to say that, you keep your spot at that job. And usually people have to go over that if they want to go on the trajectory to become a partner at that firm. So keep it in mind that those are requirements, whereas in government sector, we don't have any billable hour requirements. We have a 40-hour work week. I actually work 10-hour days, 4 days a week. So I have 3-day weekends every weekend. I like the fact that I don't have a billable hour requirement. There are opportunities to progress. I know there is definitely a cap about how much money I can make. If you watch my other video about how much do lawyers make, if you go in the Office of Personal Management, we cap out at a certain amount, right? Unless we go over to other SES levels or other, but even when we can't make more than the President of the United States makes, right? Whereas big law, it's kind of like, you're bringing in money. Once you're a partnership, you're sharing in the profits. You can make quite a bit of money, right? So keep that in mind, that the monetary compensation between big law and government is quite different. Also, the time requirements are quite different as well. So figure out what's best for you. When you become a lawyer, you'll probably hear your share of horror stories about what happens at law firms, rude partners, rude associates, people not being very nice or friendly. And to be honest, that can happen with any profession. Let's be real, right? But if you're in the law field, you'll probably hear from other lawyers at other firms. And that never appealed to me, working at a place where somebody's going to degrade me just so I can make $300,000. What is that? What my sanity was? Is that what my worth is? My self-worth is worth? I don't think so. And not to say that all firms are that way, but I've definitely heard my share of stories about it, right? Like I said, you may also have some negative experiences if you go with non-big law firms, right? And then I guess the thing about that would be like, you getting degraded and you're not even getting paid as much. So keep in mind, don't sacrifice your dignity, your self-respect for a paycheck, because years down the line, you'll look back at it and be like, I don't think that was worth it. So keep in mind that wherever employer you want to work at, make sure that the culture there is respectful and they actually care about their employees. Okay, one other thing, I don't know if I'm on number 3, if I passed 3, but one other thing as far as even the compensation you get. I know some people take out quite a bit of student loans in order to finance their law school education. In big law, having such a big salary helps to pay that back down. If you do go into public interest, you do have the option of having the public service forgiveness program, which forgives your loans after paying for 120 payments, which is the equivalent of 10 years. So it depends. You can still pay back your student loans depending on which route you go. Perhaps in big law, you can do it in half the time. If you really put your money away, you can pay it off in half the time. If you go into public interest, you can pay it off within 10 years. But paying back student loans is definitely a consideration that most people think about when they decide where they want to go, especially if they had to borrow to go to law school. It kind of motivates them to say, listen, I can tackle this down a lot faster. Some of them even go and switch over to public interest after they pay off their loans because they just did it for the purpose of, kind of accelerating the debt payoff. So keep it in mind. That is something that you should consider because you do not want to have that student loan debt monkey on your shoulder for a long time if you can help it. Let me know of any other topics you want to talk about in the future. We try to give you some relevant topics to think about as aspiring lawyers, current law students, and even new attorneys. See you next video.